New York Rangers prospect Gabe Perreault is lighting up the World Juniors, but there is one thing that the Rangers absolutely must do when it comes to his development, and we discuss that and more in today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1214 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. So with the Rangers obviously just kind of spiraling with their season going down the drain here, and one loss after the next, one blowout loss after the next, and a matchup against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers looming, I figured we could kind of use this in-between time here, the time between the Lightning loss and the, if we're being honest, probable loss of the Panthers. I mean, I'm usually glass half full. I usually try to be positive. I just don't see a reason why the Rangers are going to win that game, but I would love to be proven wrong. Regardless, though, the time in between these two games against the two Florida teams, we are going to do something a little bit different and take a look at the three Ranger prospects that are currently playing in the World Juniors. They are Gabe Perreault and Drew Fortescue, both representing Team USA for the second year, and also Rico Gredig playing for Switzerland. And I figure we can start with Gabe Perreault. He's obviously a top-notch prospect, and for my money, and I think most people would probably agree with me, the prospect that the Rangers have, who very clearly has the most upside, the highest ceiling, the most long-term potential, that would be Gabe Perreault. And for anybody that might need a little bit of a refresher as far as Gabe Perreault, who he is, how he wound up with the Rangers, basically he fell down the draft in 2023 farther in the first round than I think anybody thought that he would, and the Rangers were there waiting at number 23. They stepped up and nabbed their guy, just a tremendously talented player. He's proved that and more in these last couple of seasons with Boston College, and now the second straight year that he is playing in the World Juniors as well and going for his second straight gold medal. So the tournament right now, and again, for anybody not familiar with the World Juniors, it's basically a collection of players under 20 years old, many of whom have been drafted, many of whom have, bright futures in the NHL. We've seen a lot of different Rangers play in this tournament over the years and, eventually go on to have really nice careers for themselves. But as I said, the preliminary round is ongoing right now. There's 10 teams. 8 of them will advance out of the preliminaries. And then from that point on, you've got 8 teams. It'll be single elimination the rest of the way. And somebody will win the gold. Somebody will win the silver. Somebody will win the bronze. We'll see how it all shakes out. But like I said, I want to mostly focus. We'll talk about the tournament as a whole a little bit. But I think the main focus is going to be on the Ranger prospects. And certainly we're going to start here with Gabe Perreault. So for a quick rundown as far as how it's gone for Perreault so far, the United States got a big win over Germany in their first game. They win 10-4. Perreault in that game scored 2 goals and had an assist. There was one of his goals that was kind of circulating on social media a little bit. Basically, United States gets into the offensive zone and they send a centering pass to Perreault, and he just goes right to the net, makes it look effortless, scores on a wrist shot, and at that point gave the United States a 2-0 lead. He then, a little bit later in this game, had a primary assist. There was a centering pass that he made from along the boards to Hagens, who shot and scored from the center of the ice. That made it 4-2 United States. And then also, late in the second period, a goal that you could maybe argue was the dagger in this game, made it 6-2. Perreault had the puck tipped away from him in the offensive zone, but was able to recover it, fought to get it back, passed to Hudson. Hudson then back to Perreault, and Perreault blisters a wrist shot from the right circle and scores. Perreault also had 7 shots on goal in this game. So obviously a tremendous first game showing for Perreault in the World Juniors this year. USA then went on to beat Latvia in its second game of the preliminaries. Perreault, the final score, by the way, was 5-1. Perreault with a secondary assist on a goal by his college teammate, Ryan Leonard. That made the score 2-0. Just a goal with some really nice passing, a nice tic-tac-toe goal. And Perreault was able to pass from the top of the left circle across the ice to Hagens. Hagens then in deep to Leonard, who tipped it in for the goal. And then just not too long ago, United States and Finland going final. Finland beats the United States 4-3 in overtime. No points for Perreault in this game, but he looked good. He looked dangerous. He looked explosive, and he hit the post twice on 2 separate occasions. Occasions where the goalie was basically beat, but it just happened to catch the post. The one time, too, he was going in on a breakaway. The Finland goalie just happened to make a really nice save at the last second there. So good stuff. And obviously Perreault off to a heck of a start in this tournament. And really, none of this is at all surprising for anybody that's kind of kept an eye on Perreault, for anybody that, knows how much buzz there was surrounding him going into the draft. And obviously, he's done a fantastic job at Boston College. For more context, last season at BC, as a rookie, he's near the top of the leaderboard in all of college hockey. I said rookie, I meant freshman. You'll bear with me as I get the college and pro lingo mixed up from time to time while doing episodes like this. But bottom line, last year, as a freshman, near the top of just about every relevant offensive stat, he ends up with 19 goals and 41 assists for 60 points in just 36 games, once again as a freshman at BC. And then Boston College lost to Denver in the championship game, to close their season. This year, though, basically more of the same for Perreault at Boston College, 7 goals and 16 assists in 16 games. And again, the upside, the just pure skill, it's all very tantalizing. And I know there's a lot of Ranger fans that are certainly looking forward to Perreault making his debut with this team. I have some thoughts on that in just a second. But I also just want to point out the one, I guess, knock you could say on Perreault. I hesitate to even call it a knock because it's not really his fault. He's clearly not the biggest skater on the ice. He's just 5'11" and 165 pounds. You figure he'll fill out a little bit more as he starts to get older here. Really, though, his lack of size is just about the only knock against him. I can only assume that his smaller frame pretty much has to be the reason why he fell as far in the draft as he did, because every mock draft that I was looking at, going into that draft, had Perreault going, around like 10 or 13, somewhere in that area, maybe a top 10 overall pick, but probably no later than, 15th or so. And man, on that night, he just keeps falling and falling and falling, basically fell right into the Rangers' lap. And they went ahead and made the pick that I feel like they almost had to make at that point. I'm not so sure that they expected that he would be available at that time. I remember going into the draft that year, I talked about Perreault, but only briefly, because again, looking at all the different scouting reports, the assumption was many, was that there's no way he's going to be available at number 23 when the Rangers are picking. But lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And when you look at the Ranger prospects right now, there's some good ones. I don't think any of them has, once again, nearly the upside or just the tremendous raw skill that Gabe Perreault currently possesses. And for what it's worth, this is kind of interesting as well. He is one of 4 alternate captains on Team USA. So obviously, stepping up in the leadership department as well. But here's something that I was talking about right from the intro of this show, something that the Rangers absolutely positively must do as it pertains to Gabe Perreault. They have to give him some time with the Hartford Wolfpack. I don't know when Perreault is going to make his professional debut. I'm hoping it's as soon as this upcoming season. But the Rangers lately, they've kind of had a history, and there's been mixed results with this, but they've had a history of rushing their top prospects to the NHL. Lafreniere skipped the AHL entirely. Capo Caco skipped the AHL entirely. Keandre Miller skipped the AHL entirely. Then you've got 2 really extreme examples here. And honestly, the biggest mistake with these 2 wasn't the lack of time that they got in the AHL. It was the fact that the Rangers drafted them in the first place. But I'm talking about Vitaly Kravtsov and Elias Anderson. Kravtsov only ended up playing 39 AHL games, didn't really want to be there, seemed to have some attitude issues and think that he was above it and everything. And that was a whole saga in and of itself that we don't need to rehash here. But then Elias Anderson, it was kind of the same deal. Again, questionable attitude, and ends up with just 74 games with the Wolfpack, 66 games with the Rangers. He heads over to the Kings, but it doesn't go very well for him there either. Kravtsov ends up on the Canucks for a handful of games, and neither one of them is currently in the NHL. They were just bad picks, like I said. But to bring this thing full circle here, again, a lot of Ranger prospects skipping the AHL. Can we please not make the same mistake when it comes to Gabe Perreault? I'm not saying that he has to spend like 2 or 3 seasons there, not by a long shot. I don't think you have to go overboard with it. I think it should be determined. Crazy idea here, but bear with me. I think the amount of time that Perreault spends with the Hartford Wolfpack in the AHL should be mostly determined by how well he plays there. Crazy concept, right? So put him in the AHL before he comes to the Rangers. Resist the temptation to call him up and make a splash and make this big impact with Gabe Perreault. Resist that entirely and start him with the Hartford Wolfpack. Monitor his progress, see how he does. To me, I think Perreault's got to get a bare minimum of, I would say, half a season with the Hartford Wolfpack. And again, maybe that's a little bit too much for certain, fans of this team. Maybe you want to see him sooner than that. Maybe you think that, just a handful of games, 5 or 10 games would be enough. For me, I just don't want to see the Rangers make the same mistake. I'm going to err on the side of caution when it comes to player development, which is something that pretty clearly has been something of an issue for this franchise for some time now. Again, there's certain players that they never should have drafted in the first place, but the Raiders' history of first-round picks over the last bunch of seasons here, it's not exactly an impressive list of players. It's just not. I mean, if we're being honest about it, it's just not. So err on the side of caution. Let him get acclimated to professional hockey. Let him play in the AHL. Let him hopefully go out there, start dominating in the AHL. And then once you feel he's ready, once you feel that he's got nothing left to prove there, whether that's half a season in the AHL, 2/3 of a season, 3/4 of a season, maybe even an entire season in the AHL, that's when you call him up. That's when you put him on the Rangers. I just don't want them to see, I don't want to see them make the same mistake with Perreault that they've, made with a couple of their other prospects in recent seasons. So just by 2 cents, you guys let me know how you feel about it. But that's kind of where I'm at with Gabe Perreault and his development. But obviously great to see him off to a very strong start for Team United States in the World Juniors as well. So going to keep everything moving in just a second. We're going to shift our attention to Drew Fortescue, another Ranger prospect that is representing Team USA in the World Juniors. And we're going to talk about why his stock is up and why he has suddenly become a very, very important prospect for this Ranger team. We will do all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to all of us. We've all had a few subscriptions that we didn't even realize that we were still paying for, and Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. Big shout out to the everydayers as always. You guys have been troopers, obviously, through this, brutal stretch of hockey that the Rangers are playing. I've been kind of like jokingly calling it an amazing stretch of hockey, but it's just brutal, man. All joking aside, this has been rough. This has been about as bad as it gets, I think, for Ranger fans. This is bad of a stretch and as hopeless of a stretch as I can remember this team going through in quite some time. We probably got to go back to the, early 2000s teams to find a Ranger brand of hockey that was as miserable as this. I know some people point at the rebuilding years, but they were rebuilding. You could grade on a curve back then, and they were putting the pieces back together and working their way back to becoming a contender, which they did for a few years. This year, we think they're Stanley Cup contenders, and it doesn't even look like they're going to be a playoff team. So it's been rough for sure. So props to you guys for sticking around and hanging in there, and obviously, watching the podcast, listening to the podcast as well. And for the everydayers, we will talk about whatever happens in the Rangers-Panthers game, which will obviously be going down on Monday night. But for right now, let's keep the focus on the World Juniors and specifically the Ranger prospects. And we're going to move right along here to defenseman Drew Fortescue. Fortescue is becoming, like I said a second ago, and I'll elaborate on this more in just a minute, I would say one of the most important Ranger prospects that they have. I would put him probably like in the top 3 right now. And like I said, I'm going to elaborate on that in just a second. But for, again, anybody that needs a little bit of a refresher, who is Drew Fortescue? When did the Rangers draft him? All that good stuff. Former 3rd-round pick by the Rangers in 2023. So they took him the same year that they took Gabe Perreault. And now, obviously, the two of them are teammates at BC. And they're also teammates now for the 2nd straight season for Team USA. And Perreault through 3 games in this tournament does not have any points, but that's not really, I said Perreault. I meant Fortescue. Fortescue through 3 games in this tournament does not currently have any points, but that's nothing to really get worried about. That's not really his forte. He's more of a stay-at-home physical defenseman. 56 college games between last year and this year. He only has 4 goals and 8 assists, but he is a plus 25 in that time. So they are not conceding goals when Drew Fortescue is on the ice. And there's a lot to like here, lack of offense aside. Good size, first of all. I know a lot of Ranger fans are going to like the sound of that. 6'2", 176 pounds. Got to figure he's going to put on some weight as he goes forward here, as he continues to, once again, fill out. He is just 19 years old at this time. He's also known as somebody that can move the puck a little bit and somebody that, again, not a ton of offense, but this guy can move the puck out of his own zone. And just saying that out loud and just hearing that, it's like a breath of fresh air. And this guy has not even played a single game of hockey for the New York Rangers because we know what an issue that has been for this Ranger team. I mean, honestly, even last year, obviously the Rangers had a great season last year, but that was one of their Achilles heels, the inability to get the puck out of the defensive zone, especially against a hard forechecking team such as the Panthers, which is, of course, the team that knocked them out in the Eastern Conference Final. But yeah, man, that sounds pretty good to me. Let's get a defenseman that can actually move the puck out of the defensive zone, get it heading up the ice, and just make simple but effective plays to clear the zone. And it sounds like that Fortescue is more than capable of doing exactly that. But to go back to something I mentioned a second ago, I talked about how I believe that Fortescue has very quickly become one of the most important Ranger prospects that they have. And the reason for that is, frankly, because when you look at the Ranger blue line right now, you look at this current group of Ranger defensemen, it's a mess. It's a mess in terms of how they're playing out there. And it's also a mess in terms of what does the future hold for any of these guys. It's hard to look at too many Ranger defensemen right now. And honestly, I was going to say, come to the conclusion that they have a long-term future with the Rangers. I'm not sure how many of them even have a short-term future with the Rangers. When you look at everything that's gone on here, I mean, let's take it from the top. Jacob Trouba, he's gone. They trade away their captain, and that obviously opens up a spot, potentially for Fortescue or anybody else who wants to grab it. Ryan Lindgren, I will be very, very surprised if he's not moved before the trade deadline this season, especially as this season continues to spiral. The only way it doesn't happen is if the Rangers somehow miraculously turn things around and get back into the playoff hunt and he starts to play better. Maybe at that point you start feeling like, okay, well, let's just hang on to him through the last year of his contract and then we let him walk in the offseason. But one way or another, I don't see any way possible that Lindgren is on this team for opening night next season. You look at somebody like Keandre Miller, it could still go either way with him. He wants a big raise. Not so sure that his play warrants it. And I'm also not so sure that the Rangers are looking to commit long-term financially to Keandre Miller, given that he is plateaued at best the last couple of seasons here. So Keandre Miller, another defenseman with an uncertain future. Zach Jones talked about him at length in the last episode. The Rangers are never going to commit to him. They're never going to, really allow him to be a mainstay in the lineup. Not that he's like this spectacular defenseman, but I think he's outplayed a lot of guys that have been getting playing time over him this season. So Jones is an RFA with arbitration rights after the season. I expect him to be traded too. Adam Fox, you never know for sure. I would not move Fox. I would not do that. But there is an interesting situation here because right now, Fox has no kind of no-move protection at all. The Rangers could trade him to any team in the NHL tomorrow, and there's nothing he could do about it if they were to make that decision. However, the next 2 years of his contract, he has a full no-move clause and cannot be traded anywhere without his permission. And then the final 2 years of his contract, he has a 16-team no-trade clause. So I get the feeling like I don't think the Rangers are actively looking to move Adam Fox, nor do I think that they should. But if somebody gives them a call, I mean, do you really think they're just going to, hang up the phone? Because I don't. I think that they'll at least, hear a team out if it comes to offers for Adam Fox. Nevertheless, I do expect Adam Fox will be here, beyond this season and probably for pretty much the duration of his current contract. You look at Brandon Schneider. Now, he's under contract next year. I think Schneider is going to stick around. RFA with arbitration rights the year after that, though. We'll see how it goes. I think Schneider has a decent chance of being here for the long haul. Vakanainen and Borgen, the two new guys, I mean, they could both be dealt by the time that the trade deadline rolls around here. And then, you can look at other Ranger defenseman prospects. There aren't really that many of them outside of Fortescue. You've obviously got E.J. Emery. He was the first-round pick this past season for the Rangers. And, he, for what it's worth, was one of the last players cut by Team USA for the World Juniors here, so he didn't quite make it. But even Emery, it's going to take him a little bit longer, you would think, to make it to the NHL than it will take Fortescue. So Emery's on the way, but he's not there yet. Victor Mancini, I think we'll see him on the opening night roster next season, but you get the idea here. There's nobody that really has a certain long-term future with the New York Rangers in terms of their defensemen, the current defense on the roster and also the prospect as well. Matthew Robertson, I mean, when's the last time you've ever even heard his name outside of this podcast? Nobody even talks about Matthew Robertson anymore. So to bring everything full circle once again here, yeah, Drew Fortescue, this is somebody that the Rangers desperately need to work out because I just don't know what the future is going to hold for this current Ranger blue line. The blue line's in shambles right now. Nobody's playing well. Nobody's playing up to their capability. Many of them could be traded before the deadline. A whole nother group of them might walk after the season is over. There aren't really a ton of prospects. Emery, he's a prospect, first rounder, but he's not there yet. Mancini, what was he, a fifth rounder, I believe it was? Showed some promise, but not like a top of the line prospect. I think certainly Mancini's stock has risen, given the fact that he made the team out of camp this year. But yeah, man, this is a prospect that needs to work out for the Rangers in a bad way. Hopefully he can come up, play some physical hockey, just be a reliable, steady defenseman. Even that sounds like an upgrade on what they're currently getting from, this current group. So yeah, man, a lot riding on Drew Fortescue and his development and his ability to eventually step into the NHL and, play some quality hockey for this team. So going to keep everything moving in just a second. We're going to shift our attention to the third and final Ranger prospect that is participating in this tournament. That would be Rico Gredig, who is representing Team Switzerland, and we will do that in just a second. All right, let's go ahead and close out today's episode by once again talking about Rico Gredig, a former 6th-round pick by the New York Rangers, listed as a left winger and a center. He is currently playing with HC Davos of the NL, 6'1", 179 pounds. He got the overage prospect designation, which is basically just a lingo for one of the older players in the draft. He's also one of the older players in this tournament. He's going to turn 20 in February, so this will be his last go-around in the World Juniors. He did play on Switzerland's World Juniors team last year as well. Ended up having 1 assist and was a +2 in the 5 games last year. Switzerland did make it out of the preliminaries last year, but they lost in the first round to Sweden in overtime. And then in the tournament this year, Switzerland's not exactly off to a great start. They are 0-3. With that said, though, it's looking like if we assume that Kazakhstan loses its next game, then that means that Kazakhstan and Switzerland will both be 0-3. And if Switzerland then beats Kazakhstan in the last game of the preliminaries, they will advance. Switzerland and Gredig will advance to the knockout round. You don't have to do that much. You just can't come in last place out of the 5 teams in your poll. So Gredig and Switzerland, you never know for sure, but I would think that they will live to fight another day, and we'll see what Gredig and his team can do with that opportunity. But to just kind of run through everything here, they started their tournament, Switzerland did, by losing 5-1 to Czechia. Gredig had 1 shot on goal in that game. Switzerland then lost 2-1 to Slovakia. Gredig did not play in that game. He was a healthy scratch for that one. And then a little bit earlier today, and it's Sunday as I'm recording this, they lose 7-5 to Sweden. Worth pointing out that they trailed 6-1 going into the third period, so they at least made some noise, made it somewhat interesting. Not a great showing for Gredig, though. He was a -3, took a penalty, and had only 11 minutes and 42 seconds of ice time. As far as how he's done at HC Davos, Gredig this year, 27 games, only 2 goals and 2 assists. He's also a +1 thus far this season with HC Davos. And it was basically the same thing last year with HC Davos for Gredig. 28 games that season, 2 goals, 2 assists, and was a -4. So obviously scoring has been very, very difficult for him the last couple of seasons here with HC Davos. Before that, though, he did spend some time with the HC Davos under-20 team. He wasn't too far away from point-per-game territory there. He had 7 goals and 8 assists during 17 games with the U20 team last year. But as far as scoring and offensive fireworks for Gredig, it has not translated to the next level, at least not yet. Look, if we're being honest here, you're not going to see Gredig's name at the top or anywhere near the top of, the best Ranger prospects. I doubt very much he would even be in the top 10, maybe not in the top 15. I mean, I have to go through all of them and kind of look at, where everything stands and everything. There's not really a ton of information available on Gredig. The bottom line is this is somebody that, just isn't that highly thought of a prospect. Now, it doesn't mean that he can't defy the odds. We've seen undrafted players, we've seen late round players at least make it to the NHL, and in some cases go on to have fantastic careers for themselves. I think for the Rangers, the go-to primary example of that will always be Henrik Lundqvist, who they obviously selected in the 7th round. He's got an uphill battle to fight, does Gredig, as does everybody that gets drafted late in the NHL draft. But I think it's at least a good thing that, he's getting to participate in this tournament the last couple of years here, because he's getting to go out there and test himself against some other, top young players, guys that have been drafted very high. It's a good experience, I'm sure. And I mean, all these guys, no matter what your home country is, they love that opportunity. They love that experience to go out there and represent their home country. And I'm hoping to watch more of this tournament as we go forward here. Just kind of caught bits and pieces of the first couple of games here in the preliminaries. By the time we get to the knockout round, the single elimination portion of the tournament, that's when I'm really going to lock in and really start paying attention. And, the way things have gone with the Rangers lately, I can't recommend this tournament enough to you guys. I know some of you probably already watch it, and that's awesome. It really is a fun tournament every season. If you haven't really watched it, you're not really sure what it's about, you don't really get the hype, give it a chance. It's a lot of fun. It really is interesting to see some of these younger Ranger prospects, in action on the world stage, competing for a gold medal. We don't have as many Ranger prospects participating this year as some other years. We've had as many as like 6 or 7 prospects play, in recent years in different versions of this tournament. Some of the more recent guys, Dylan Garand was fantastic for Team Canada. Brian Schneider was a standout for Canada. Will Cooley, he was great when he played in this tournament. If you want to go way back, Mika Zibanejad, this feels like a million years ago at this point, but he had a overtime goal in Sweden's gold medal clincher, a couple of years back, or more than a couple, but that was obviously a big moment for him. Chris Kreider played in this tournament. There's Brett Berard. Brett Berard, I think, is another great, more recent example. Kakko Lafreniere. Kakko won a gold medal for Finland. I want to say that was the last time that Finland won the gold medal. Obviously, Kakko is now a former Ranger, but you get the idea. A lot of Ranger prospects have participated in this tournament. We got a couple doing it right now, and it is a lot of fun to kind of, I think for a lot of us, get your first look at these guys. And it's great competition. These kids are hungry. It clearly means a lot to them. Can't recommend this tournament enough. There's a long way to go here. We got the rest of the preliminaries, and then we've got the knockout round, which is even better. So definitely check it out if you have not already. Figure we could pretty much call it there for today. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.